So I told Manley, I says, well, I'd like you to take a fact-finding tour and see what you see within the community and see the behavior, especially of the police.
Mr. Manley, now you've had a chance to consider all that you've seen and heard this week. What do you think was the main cause of all this trouble? Was it basically a matter of racial prejudice?
I think it is. I admit, quite frankly, that there are a lot of particular local causes, housing problems, difference of habits, fears about employment, teddy boy activity. But I think we ought to face the basic fact that color and race prejudice is the only thing that could have made these things end in disorders of this sort.
Distrust lingered in the streets of Notting Hill. 8 months after the riots, a Trinidadian, Kelso Cochran, was surrounded by a white gang while walking home at night. He was stabbed to death.
Because of the militant stand we put up, Kelso was ambushed and was being killed by several of those teddy boys. I attended the funeral, and there were thousands of people there because of the way he was killed and knowing that he was killed by these animals. It was definitely racism that has caused the riot. Keep Britain white. And I was determined that Britain will never be kept white because we are here now. So how the hell am you going to tell me? So to keep it white, then you have to kill me then and carry me out on the bloody box.
These West Indians were among the last to arrive at Southampton before immigration was controlled.
The political push for immigration control eventually won the day. The predominant view was that restricting entry would ease racial conflict. The numbers game had begun. 1962 saw the first of a string of immigration laws which were to be further tightened by Labour.
This country is not alone. Every other country seeks to control immigration. But the problem, however, in this country is that it seems that the immigration acts in recent times, in the 60s and 70s, and in fact we've had another one, the Immigration Act of 1988, they have tended to have an inbuilt racism, if you like, or discrimination. And some people think that the discrimination has been institutionalized in this respect.
Black people already settled in Britain also faced discrimination, especially at work. Many West Indians came with skills, but employers generally gave them menial jobs that white people didn't want. Some trade union branches tried to restrict the numbers of black workers. The arguments against employing black people were contradictory. On the one hand, there was said to be a cheap pool of labour who brought down wages. On the other, that they were lazy. Discrimination was commonplace.
For instance, I applied for jobs. And when I went to the job, they said, sorry, the vacancy is full. You know, the exchange sent me to a job. He phoned the company before, he did a vacancy, yes. He said, I'm selling over somebody, and he didn't explain to who it was. And when I went there, I was told the vacancy is filled.
Same thing happened when I qualified in the first studies I did, and I was looking for a job, a permanent job. And always they were telling me that I was either overqualified or too experienced or too old. So it was racism manifesting itself in that indirect way.
Something is holding me back. Is it because I'm black? Something is holding me back. I'm wondering if it's because I'm black.
The period when Peter Griffith stood as a candidate, and the racism was so naked and raw as far as British politics was concerned, that, I mean, they were openly saying and preaching that if you want a nigger for your neighbor, vote Labour. And that's how Patrick Gordon Walker lost his seat. And at that time, racism, you know, was becoming so, it was becoming acceptable that there was nothing wrong in people saying, you know, that they're a racist. That which is something coming from the Caribbean we found very, very difficult to accept and to understand. And none of the parties at that time were prepared to come out and say something or do anything.
Smethwick showed there were votes in race. Labour believed that restricting immigration while outlawing some forms of discrimination would achieve good race relations, while a former Tory minister responsible for recruiting West Indian nurses seemed concerned for them.
Perhaps the greater part of the present coloured immigrants and their families do not yet regard this country as a place of permanent settlement. Here lies the crucial importance for you and me, and no less for those among the immigrants whose future does lie here, of that policy of assisted repatriation and resettlement which Sir Alec Douglas Hume, as leader of our party, adopted almost 4 years ago. To proclaim that policy, and when we have the opportunity to put it into effect with generosity, with humanity, with determination, and with hope, is a duty which we owe to all, white and coloured.
You see that man, Enoch Powell, I'm not sort of getting on this television program to say things that will be personal to people. But I think this man is a bit, to say things that he say on TV, I think is beyond comprehension. Whether you hate black people, or whether you hate Chinese, or whether you hate any human being, if he had any knowledge of what repatriating, say, my twins to a place like Dominica, where they can't identify themselves even with their immediate family, even with their mothers, sisters and brothers, they find it hard to identify with them. In fact, everything, they come from a place like Scotland, which is so much different in culture. His plan is like sending them to death warrant.
In his Rivers of Blood speech, Enoch Powell predicted an immigrant invasion.
I spoke about the deep fears and resentments which leads to violence.
I told Mr. Powell that he could not remain a member of the Shadow Cabinet because of the inflammatory nature of his speech at Birmingham.
We ought to stop all immigration into this country, and if any immigrant wants to go back home, then we would help subsidise him to go back home. Now that's all Enoch Powell said.
What Enoch Powell said was right. We say there's enough of them.
The sense of alarm and of resentment lie not with the immigrant population, but with those among whom they have come and are still coming.
This man saying things like that, I hope he redresses that before he dies, you know. He should redress it, you know, because it's not nice to say things, to incite things to happen. Because we have something to contribute here. I'm sure of that.
One experience I have never forgotten. It was a very small matter. On a Saturday, I had done the shopping. It was bitterly cold. And I was carrying 2 luggages in both hands. And